Playing with Power MTG. Powerful cards, powerful formats. Before we get into tonight's game, I wanted to ask a question. Do you have extra cards lying around that you don't use? Want to buy or trade for some extra cards but don't know how to maximize the value? Then you should try out today's sponsor, Card Conduit. Card Conduit is the best service when it comes to selling your extra cards. They have three main services. Their standard service lets you send them your unsorted cards of any value. They will sort, grade, and give you the best price for your cards. Their curated service is similar. Send them your unsorted cards worth over $1 in value. They will charge half the fee of the standard service and charge no fee per card. Their sorted service is a great value as well. Choose cards in advance with their selection tool, send them sorted to Card Conduit, and they will grade and buy list them automatically. Save yourself the time of having to send to multiple sites and let Card Conduit do it instead. Their fee is only 2% with no fee per card. So give Card Conduit a try today. If you sign up with my link in the description below or use the promo code POWER, you will also get 10% off of their fees when you use their service. A big thanks to Card Conduit for sponsoring today's video. Now, let's start out by showcasing our fighters this evening. First, we have Kyle, piloting the partner pair of Thrasios Triton Hero and Bruised Tarl Boorish Herder. This deck seeks to grind value with a deck full of high-quality cards. It then generates infinite mana, pumps it into Thrasios, and wins the game with Thassa's Oracle. Next, we have Matt from Lemora's Cards, piloting the partner pair of Rograk Son of Roga and Thrasios Triton Hero. This is his signature deck, leveraging a number of value engines combined with the efficiency of Rograk. It assembles a number of 2-card combos, draws its deck with Thrasios, and wins the game. After that, we have Pearson, piloting Storm, Force of Nature. This deck seeks to use its commander as a way to get extra value out of his spells. He then uses Storm strategies to either draw a ton of cards, resolve Underworld Breach, or burn out the table. Finally, we have Jay, also known as Defcat, piloting Tasigur, the Golden Fang. This deck seeks to fill the graveyard before casting its commander at a discounted price. He then uses his commander as a political tool or sinks infinite mana to assemble a number of combos to win the game. This video would not be possible without all of the support of all of our sponsors, including viewers like you on Patreon. If you want to support this content, be sure to check out the links below. You can also support us for free by liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and letting us know how egregious our misplays are in the comments section below. Without further ado, let's kick off this swinging sassy silly scrimmage. Kyle got the most Tinder dates and gets to start us off. Kyle draws a card for turn and plays a Polluted Delta. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a tropical island onto the battlefield. He casts Avacyn's Pilgrim. He casts a Mox Amber. He passes. Matt draws and plays a Prismatic Vista. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up an island onto the battlefield. He casts his commander, Rograk, Son of Roga. He casts Springleaf Drum. He casts Mystic Remora. The table groans, and Remora resolves. The table agrees to a Fish Pact, Matt laughs, and then ends his turn. Pearson draws and plays a Windswept Teeth. Honoring the Fish Pact, he ends his turn. Jay draws and plays a Misty Rainforest. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a tropical island onto the battlefield. He casts a Delighted Halfling and ships the turn to Kyle. Kyle draws and plays a Verdant Catacombs. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Taiga onto the battlefield. He casts his commander, Thrasios Triton Hero. Still adhering to the Fish Pact, Kyle gives the turn to Matt. During his upkeep, Matt pays to keep his Remora. He draws and plays a Taiga. He casts Mox Diamond, discarding Undercity Sewers. He also casts his commander, Thrasios. He casts Wild Growth on his Taiga. He passes. At the end of Matt's turn, Pearson cracks his Windswept Teeth, pays a life, and fetches up a Stomping Ground onto the battlefield tapped. Pearson draws and plays a Cavern of Souls, naming Human as it enters. He casts an Arcane Signet. Remora triggers, Matt cheers, and finally draws a card. With the Fish Pact broken, Pearson passes. Jay draws and plays an Emergence Zone. Feeling hurt by the Fish Pact betrayal, he casts Mox Diamond. Remora triggers, and Matt draws a card. Diamond resolves, and Jay discards a Bayou. He casts a Lotus Petal, and Matt draws again. Jay ships the turn. Kyle draws and plays a Tundra. He casts Seedborn Muse. Everyone asks Matt for help, but he says he's fresh out of answers. He reasons that if they feed his fish, he might be able to help. So in response, Jay casts Dark Ritual. Remora triggers, and Matt draws. Ritual resolves, and Jay has 3 black. Still in response, Jay cracks his Emergence Zone, giving his spells flash until the end of turn. He casts Crop Rotation, sacrificing Tropical Island as an additional cost. Remora triggers, and Matt draws again. Then Jay fetches up a Gaia's Cradle onto the battlefield. He delves away some of his graveyard and taps Delighted Halfling to help flash in an uncounterable commander, Tasigur the Golden Fang. Still in response, he flashes in a Neoform, sacrificing Tasigur as an additional cost. Remora triggers, and Matt draws a card. Neoform resolves, and Jay fetches up a Scholar of the Lost Trove onto the battlefield. It enters and triggers, targeting Neoform in his graveyard. He casts it for free through Scholar, sacrificing Scholar as an additional cost, and Matt draws again. Neoform resolves, and Jay fetches up a Hoarding Broodlord onto the battlefield. Now the table realizes that Seedborn is the least of their worries. The table can only hope that Remora will get them out of this mess. Hoarding Broodlord triggers, and Jay fetches up a card into exile face down. He convokes Broodlord to help cast Saw in Half from exile, targeting his Broodlord. Remora triggers, and Matt draws. Broodlord is destroyed and Jay creates 2 copies, each trigger, and Jay fetches up 2 more cards into exile face down. He convokes a Broodlord to help cast Sacrifice from exile, sacrificing his Broodlord as an additional cost. For more triggers, and Matt draws. Then Jay adds 8 black. He casts Peer into the Abyss from exile, targeting himself. For more triggers, and Matt draws. In response, Matt casts Deflecting Swat for its alternate cost, targeting Peer. Jay sinks his head, and Swat resolves. Matt changes the target of Peer from Jay to himself. Then Peer resolves, and Matt draws half of the cards in his library and loses half of his life rounded up. With Seedborn still in the stack, Matt casts Flare of Denial for its alternate cost, sacrificing Thrasios. In response, Jay delves away some of his graveyard to help recast his commander, Tasigur. Tasigur resolves, then, after all of that, Flare counters Seedborn. With nothing else, Kyle passes to Matt. During his upkeep, Matt lets his Lemora die. He draws and plays a Volcanic Island. He casts Kinnan, Ponder Prodigy. He casts Mox Amber. He casts a Chrome Mox, imprinting Sylvan Safekeeper. He casts a Soul Ring. He casts a Grim Monolith. He casts a Trophy Mage. It enters, and Matt fetches up a Basalt Monolith into his hand. He casts Basalt Monolith. He taps Basalt for 4 through Kinnan, then uses 3 to untap it. He uses this loop to generate infinite colorless mana. He casts Transmute Artifact, sacrificing Grim Monolith, fetching up a Cloudstone Curio onto the battlefield, paying the difference. He casts Cloud of Fairies. Cloudstone triggers and he bounces Roguerack back to his hand. Fairies enters and he untaps 2 lands. He presents another loop of casting and bouncing both Cloud of Fairies and Roguerack through Curio, untapping 2 lands each time. He nets infinite colored mana. He casts Green Sun Zenith where X equals 3. He fetches up an Eternal Witness onto the battlefield. He casts Lightning Bolt, dealing 3 to Jay. He uses his Curio loop to bounce Witness back to his hand. He recasts Witness. Witness enters and he returns Lightning Bolt from his graveyard to his hand. He presents a loop of casting Lightning Bolt, dealing 3 to an opponent, then using Witness to return it to his hand. He does this over and over until the Dable is dead, and Matt wins the game. In this game, Kyle is piloting Loot, the Pathfinder. This deck seeks to use this commander to gain massive value. It then uses Displacer Kitten to blink its commander, or Food Chain to continually recast it over and over to win the game. Jay is piloting Yisan, the Wanderer Bard. This deck seeks to use its commander to chain up bigger and bigger impactful creatures with each activation. It then assembles a combo or swings for big damage to win the game. Pearson is piloting the partner pair of Malcolm Keen-Eyed Navigator and File Smasher the Fierce. This deck seeks to gain advantage through the use of Malcolm. It then uses one of many Grixis win cards such as Underworld Breach or Thassa's Oracle. Matt is piloting Magda, Brazen Outlaw. This deck generates lots of treasures before going infinite with Clock of Omens. It then fetches up artifacts that combo off and win the game. And Kyle gets to start us off. Kyle draws and plays a Windswept Heath. He cracks it, pays a life, and fetches up a Tropical Island onto the battlefield. He passes. Jay draws and plays a 4th. He casts Carpet of Flowers. He moves to a second main phase and adds a green through his carpet. He casts Llanowar Elves. He passes. Pearson draws and plays a Mana Confluence. He taps it to cast an Imperial Seal. He fetches up a card onto the top of his library and loses 2 life. He ends his turn. Matt draws and plays a Mountain. He casts Ragavan, Nimble Pilfer. Pearson is relieved that it wasn't dashed out, as Matt follows up with a Mox Opal. He passes to Kyle. Kyle draws and plays an Exotic Orchard. He casts Polywog Prodigy. Kyle ships the turn. Jay draws, and in his first main phase, he adds a green through his carpet. He plays an Ancient Tomb for turn. He taps it to help cast his commander, Yisan the Wanderer Bard. He casts Green Sun Zenith where X equals 1. He fetches up a Sylvan Safekeeper onto the battlefield, shuffling Green Suns back into his library. Jay passes the turn. Pearson draws and plays a Volcanic Island. He casts a Soul Ring. He taps Mana Confluence to help cast his commander, Malcolm Keen-Eyed Navigator. He passes to Matt. Matt draws and moves to combat. He attacks Pearson with Ragavan. Pearson takes it, Ragavan triggers, Pearson exiles the One Ring, and Matt creates a treasure. In his second main phase, Matt casts Adaptive Automaton. He casts Liquid Metal Torque. Matt gives the turn to Kyle. Kyle draws and casts Rite of Flame, adding 2 red. He casts Birgi, God of Storytelling. Birgi enters, Polywog triggers, and gets a +1/+1 counter. He moves to combat and attacks Pearson with Polywog. Pearson takes 1, and Kyle ends his turn. Jay draws, and in his first main phase, he adds a green through his carpet. He taps Ancient Tomb to activate Yisan. It gets a counter, then Jay fetches up a Querying Ranger onto the battlefield. Jay passes to Pearson. Pearson draws and taps Mana Confluence to help cast a Glinthorn Buccaneer. The table braces for impact, but Pearson just moves to combat. He attacks Kyle with Malcolm and Matt with Glinthorn. Matt, with no other choice, blocks with Automaton. Automaton dies, Malcolm triggers, and Pearson creates a treasure. Finished up, Pearson gives the turn to Matt. Matt draws and moves to combat. He attacks Pearson with Ragavan. He takes it, Ragavan triggers, Pearson exiles Mnemonic Betrayal, and Matt creates a treasure. In his second main phase, Matt casts Jessica's Will, targeting Pearson. He adds 5 red. He casts Zorn. He casts his commander, Magda, Brazen Outlaw. Finished up, Matt passes. Kyle draws, holds open mana, and passes. At the end of Kyle's turn, Jay activates Querying Ranger, bouncing a forest to his hand, targeting Yisan. In response, Pearson casts Into the Floodmaw, targeting Yisan. Polywog triggers, and in response, Jay activates Sylvan Safekeeper, sacrificing a forest, giving Yisan Shroud until the end of turn. Then Kyle draws from Polywog, Floodmaw, and Querying Fizzle, and the turn moves to Jay. Jay draws, and in his first main phase he adds a green through his carpet. He plays a forest for turn. He casts Wild Growth on his forest. Polywog triggers and Kyle draws. Jay activates Yisan, adding a burst counter and fetching up a Fanatic of Ronus onto the battlefield. Jay ships the turn to Pearson. Pearson draws and casts Defense Grid. In response, Kyle casts Red Elemental Blast, targeting Malcolm. Malcolm is destroyed, and Defense Grid resolves. Pearson taps Mana Confluence to cast Demonic Tutor, fetching up a card into his hand. Unfortunately, he cannot do anything else, and passes to Matt. Matt draws and plays an Urza Saga, getting its first counter. He casts Plundering Barbarian. It enters, and Matt creates 2 treasures through Zorn. He moves to combat and attacks Pearson with Ragavan and Magda. Magda triggers, and Matt creates 2 more treasures. Pearson blocks Ragavan with Glenhorn. Ragavan dies, and in his second main phase, Matt activates Liquid Metal Torque, turning Plundering Barbarian into an artifact. He activates Magda, sacrificing 5 treasures, fetching up a Clock of Omens onto the battlefield. He activates Clock of Omens, tapping Plundering Barbarian and Clock itself, targeting Barbarian since it's now an artifact. Magda triggers, and Matt creates 2 treasures through Zorn. Matt presents a loop of activating Clock of Omens, tapping one of his untapped treasures and Plundering Barbarian to untap Barbarian, creating 2 treasures through Zorn. He creates infinite tapped and untapped treasures. He activates Magda, fetching up a Roaming Throne, naming Dwarf as it enters, Barkform Harvester, Apple Eden of Isu Relic, Disruptor Flute naming Yisan as it enters, and Maskwood Nexus. He casts Sculpting Steel. It enters as a copy of Roaming Throne, naming Dwarf as it enters. He activates Apple of Eden, paying 4 life, exiling Jay's hand face down. He activates Magda, fetching up a Twin-Shot Sniper onto the battlefield. And since it's a Goblin and a Dwarf through Maskwood Nexus, it triggers 3 times. It deals 2 damage to Kyle and 4 damage to itself, killing it. Matt activates Barkform Harvester, putting Twin-Shot Sniper onto the bottom of his library. He presents a loop of tutoring up Twin-Shot Sniper through Magda, dealing 2 to an opponent and 4 to itself, then putting it onto the bottom of his library through Barkform Harvester. He does this over and over until the table is dead, and Matt wins the game. Ladies and gentlemen, what a fun set of games tonight. Congrats to Matt on both of his wins. Timing is so important in CEDH, and so is patience. Matt demonstrated both tonight by waiting for the right opportunity to strike. In Game 1, had he ended Jay's plans early, he would have not have been able to steal the pier and also be able to stop the Seedborn. After he had what he needed, he closed it out. In Game 2, blocking Pearson's attacker gave him the time he needed for others to answer the win presented on the board. Once each other player had stopped the win attempts, Matt saw his window and performed his loops with triple redundant protection. The most valuable card in tonight's game, sponsored by Luxury Playstyle, goes to Deflecting SWAT. We could have given it to Emergent Zone, Hoarding Broodlord, or some of Magda's pieces, but it was the SWAT that completely turned Game 1 on its head and changed the direction with this one card. It's a powerful ability that's so versatile, just like we saw tonight. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode. Tune in next time when we duke it out to see who will be king of a competitive EDH table. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next time.